This podcast is brought to you by Podcast Nation.
You are listening to As a Woman, episode 117, Fighting Infertility with Samantha Busch.
Welcome to As a Woman, the podcast hosted by fertility physician Dr. Natalie Crawford to educate and empower women. Each week, learn about your health, your fertility, and how they relate to your true self. Become a part of the community fostering collaboration over competition while learning how to authentically find your voice and amplify others as a woman.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited to have Samantha Busch on today to share her story and talk about her new book, Fighting Infertility. Look, if you've gone through fertility treatments or had infertility, you know what a roller coaster of emotions this can be. I don't usually have people on to share their own journey because it's so hard and it makes us want to compare against each other. But Samantha has been such a huge advocate for the fertility community that I was thrilled to have her on. If you don't know her, she is wife to NASCAR champion Kyle Busch and mom to a 5-year-old named Brexton. She is an author and entrepreneur, a lifestyle blogger, an infertility warrior, a philanthropist, and co-owner of a professional race team. Her first book, Fighting Infertility, was published March 30th of 21, and she is being raw, real, and sharing her personal fertility journey that has lasted for nearly a decade. She and her husband, Kyle, have also started the Bundle of Joy Fund, which she will talk about, which is a grant to help people pay for fertility treatments. To date, the fund has awarded almost $1 million to help cover the cost of IVF for up to 70 couples. And so far, 37 babies have been born due to their grant. So we are honored to have her in this community and to be sharing her fertility story with us today. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on the As a Woman podcast. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to get to talk today, and it's an honor to be on the podcast.
So I'd love it if you would start by just giving the summary of how you became such a public figure when it comes to infertility, because your infertility journey you've shared a lot of. And if you want to kind of give the high level summary for people who don't know you, I think that'd be wonderful.
Sure. How much time do you have?
It's been quite all day. Let's go.
Okay. So my husband and I met when I was just a junior in college, fell in love, got engaged, got married, right? So, took our first few years of marriage just to enjoy being married. And then I think there's that time that comes for a lot of couples that you're like, okay, all of our friends are having kids, like we're excited, let's enter into this next chapter. And so at that time, we were like 25 and 26, never, like no health problems, worked out, ate pretty good, and just thought, okay, this is just going to happen because that's how it was
young
happening.
And healthy. It's going to happen. Yeah. Here we go.
I mean, I was either my friends were getting pregnant within the first few months or some of my girlfriends were like, oops. And, they were so excited and everybody had kids and I was like, woohoo, here we go. So, a few months go by, nothing's happening. A few more months go by, nothing's happening. Now I'm kind of calling the OBGYN. I'm like, something's wrong. They're like, no, it hasn't been a year. You've been on birth control for forever. Like, give it a year. Like, okay, but I'm type A and have 0 patients. So now I'm on the internet. Terrible idea. And I'm like, what can I do? So anything that we could try, from sex positions to if I needed to eat it or drink it, I would. And then I started getting the ovulation kits, which told me I was ovulating like all the time. So I'm like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. I kid you not, there was one point that my husband and I were just so desperate. I was like, look, we're going to have sex every day, maybe even twice a day, because I don't know what's happening, but this seems like the only logical way to get pregnant. So
you were just going for, you were taking tests and you were getting positives and you were trying everything, right?
I was ovulating, but my periods were kind of all over the place. And everybody just kept saying, give it a year. Okay. So, even, and I joke because all men are like, oh, I'd have sex every day. Well, yeah, by like day 22, my husband was like, okay, but really?
Sex burnout. That's a real thing.
Well, because also it's not like the spontaneous, exciting sex. It's like the we are trying to make a baby and it's not working sex, which is just totally different. So anyways, after around the year mark, my hair was falling out. I was just covered in acne. And then I just started bleeding a lot one day. And I was like, am I miscarrying? Is this a bad period? I'm so confused. I was like keeping track of all my periods. They were just all over the map. And so I finally called my OBGYN and I was like, I know it hasn't exactly been a year. I think I'm at month like 11. I need to come see you. Like,
Yes.
something's wrong. And so she was like, okay. So I go in, they do blood work, they do an ultrasound, and right at the ultrasound, she's like, oh, you have PCOS. Excuse me, what?
How frustrating was it to feel like you were getting pushed aside at the beginning? Oh, you're young. Oh, just wait this arbitrary time period. Yet then finally going and being told, oh, here's this thing that's preventing you from getting pregnant. That's got to be very frustrating, right?
It was very frustrating. Well, at first it was very scary because I had no idea what PCOS was. So I'm like, well, what does this mean? You know, like are we ever going to have kids? Is there something like really wrong? And so, had to do a deep dive on that. But then, yeah, there was a lot of frustration. Not as frustrating as when I get to the next point. So they put me on Clomid, which I was certifiably crazy during those 4 or 5 months.
It's a rough medication.
It was the worst. I talk about it in my book. Like I literally was losing it over movies, over salads, like you name it. It was bad. So anyways, after, I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 cycles, but they finally said, hey, we think you need to go to a fertility clinic. Like this is all we can do. So I remember we sat down with the doctor and, we had all of our paperwork with us and we're telling them everything we've gone through. And they're like, oh, okay. Do you have your husband's analysis of what? Like we just both looked and we're like, what are you talking about? They're like, his semen analysis. And we're like, no, I have the problem. And they're like, wait a second, please tell me you weren't just on months of Clomid and nobody bothered to check him. And we're like, we had no idea. I mean, we were so young. And I tell people this was at a time there weren't podcasts. Instagram was just starting. There weren't infertility support groups. So people weren't talking about it. So we didn't know.
You didn't know what was normal. And I love that you talk about this point because I often see women on the other end of the spectrum who will come to me and say, I'm not ovulating because my periods are irregular. So can you just give me some Clomid? I don't want to get my husband tested. I don't want to get, my tubes checked or do these other things because I'm the problem. And I always say, no, I have to check everything because it's going to be very frustrating to give you a medication and make you crazy for a few months if we find out it was not going to work based on other testing that we could find out now and just skip all of that. But I think that women specifically sometimes try to take on that blame. Oh, I'm the problem. Just fix me. It'll all be fine. And infertility really is a disease that can have many different causes. Sometimes the cause is unknown. Sometimes it's both partners. And it's really important to get that full evaluation. And it's so frustrating to feel like you're undergoing treatment without all of those data points.
Yes, that is the biggest thing that I try to talk about is just knowing the hand that you're dealt before. Because I think, nowadays, even there's so many at-home kits that you could take, which are even more accurate ovulation trackers, or they'll tell you what your hormone levels are, or you could, send off a semen analysis so it's not as, embarrassing as my husband might say. And then, and I always tell like some of my friends that are, going to have kids now, I'm like, even if you don't think you have a problem, just go ahead. You'll save yourself so much frustration and heartache if you knew the problem up front, because it's really that unknown that's so hard, because you're just kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. But you really don't know that it doesn't matter what supplement you take or how much acupuncture or your diet or your exercise. Like if your husband's not making sperm and you're not making mature eggs, there's nothing that's really going to help you at that point.
Right. No supplement's going to make all of that better.
Right. Eating salmon and avocado and nuts every day is not suddenly going to make either of those change. Like, it's definitely great to incorporate all those into your healthy lifestyle and to help with your fertility. But when you have an underlying issue like that, that's the hardest thing. So anyways, were told that my husband had male factor. I had PCOS. They said, all right, IVF is your best option. That in itself was overwhelming, but step by step, we got through it. And with our first transfer with our son, we got pregnant, had this textbook pregnancy. Everything was perfect. So
you're kind of living in the world of, well, we had this struggle to get to number one, but we fixed it. We figured out what the problem was. And we are textbook IVF people because we have male factor and PCOS. So we get pregnant on our first transfer. Life is great. Now we know what to do to get pregnant with the next one. That's probably the world you lived in for a while.
That was the exact world. And during that time, when our son was born, we decided to start our Bundle of Joy Fund to help other people pay for IVF. I started talking about our journey. And then as Brexton got a little bit older and we decided for number 2, I thought, okay, now at this point, social media is huge. People are starting to talk about infertility. And I'm like, you know what? How cool would it be if we brought people with through the whole thing? So then it took away some of that anxiety. So I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to film the shots and show people all the things that we're doing, and maybe it'll make it less scary. So we go through it all. We do the transfer. I get pregnant. We announce it. And it's again, like, I was just living in this, like, on cloud 9 of like, this is my life's work, like, with the foundation and helping women be less afraid of this process or to speak up about if they feel like something's wrong, yada, yada. And then literally my world since then has just come crashing down, like the bubble burst. So we announced that we were pregnant. And then it was about a week later, out of nowhere, I was playing with my son and I started just bleeding really heavy. And I called our fertility clinic and they were like, are you cramping? And I was like, yeah, really bad. And they're like, okay, you need to come in. And I just will never forget that drive. Like, I had a pad on and I just remember it was soaked. My jeans were soaked, the seat. And I just remember taking a jacket, like tying it around me and running into the clinic and just being like, oh, this is it. And we got there and they did the ultrasound and they said, well, your cervix actually closed. We see a small sac, not as big as it should be, but we have to call it a threatened miscarriage. So we had to wait 48 hours, which was
terrible.
I was like, I want an answer. And then, you try to talk yourself into it because now I'm on the internet again. Right. And it's like all of these stories of women who've been through the exact same thing and it ended up being fine.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gives you some hope that you really put everything into.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, we're going to be fine. And we are not. And so ended up having that miscarriage. That was probably the hardest year as a woman, on our marriage, on our family, just everything fell apart like really fast. And so we're really open about it. We had to work with a therapist, found a good church, just had to kind of overcome that. So a year later, we did another transfer. They called and they were like, it's a failed cycle. I'm like, what are you talking? How? So
because you hadn't had a negative cycle before then.
Exactly. So they go in, they did the reoccurring pregnancy loss panel. The results come back. They're like, everything looks fine. But what we see is you've been pregnant, you've miscarried. Now you had a failed cycle. So you're going the wrong way. And so they said, would you consider a surrogate?
So they told you, this has always shocked me. So they told you to consider surrogacy after one miscarriage and then one negative transfer.
Yes. I was like, what is our best option at this point? Now it's been 2 years and you can't find anything wrong. So it's got, again, as a woman, it's got to be me, right? There's something wrong with me. So we move forward. We tried the surrogate and she has a failed cycle. So now I'm just like, I'm so confused.
Yeah. Now everything's raining down, right? And you're just in the depths of that. Infertility is hard enough, right? What you went through initially, if we think of your story in two pieces, finding out you have PCOS, that's hard. Going to the fertility clinic, male factor, getting on board with IVF and understanding that process when everybody's not talking about it, all of that's so hard. But this other side of the fertility treatment failures, that's an entirely different ballgame, don't you think?
It is, because when you're struggling beforehand, and once they told us about IVF, that was kind of like the answer. So when the answer doesn't work, you're like, okay, well, what's next? And then you try a surrogate. And when that doesn't work, you're like, well, there are not many more options here. Like, what am I supposed to do at this point? And so at that point, I love my clinic here in Charlotte, but I was like, I'm going to go get a bunch of second opinions and just see what I'm supposed to do. So met with a number of doctors, and most of them were like, we think you need to start all the way back over at egg retrieval. My son's 6 now, 7 years later.
And did you still had embryos remaining, but the kind of consensus was maybe the embryos aren't the best quality?
Yeah. So the embryos, the first 3 that we transferred, and I know you know more about this than I can explain it correctly, were the quote unquote best graded ones. Is that how you would term it? And then the next one that we transferred was like a step down. And then the remaining ones, they said, weren't as high quality. Like, it could work, but based on the fact that the other ones that were higher quality, I'm not sure what the
grade, higher grade
didn't work. They weren't confident. And then my second and third opinions from different doctors, they were like, well, we're not confident. And I'm like, okay, can somebody just tell me what to do? Which I think is something, as a fertility patient, you're just like, someone just tell me what to do, because I don't know. I'm overwhelmed. I'm, either picking up the pieces from a miscarriage or a failed cycle. No one talks about the stress of like finding a surrogate match,
that's the hardest thing in the entire field.
Yeah. I mean, especially during COVID, there was just so much. I was like, does somebody please tell me what I'm supposed to do? So we took the new doctor's opinion. He said, I would like to start all the way back at egg retrieval. And now I'm like, but I'm 7 years older. I'm not that young 26-year-old anymore. Is it going to be okay? And they ran all the tests and they're like, we think you'll be fine. Went through egg retrieval, got our embryos, which they were pleasantly surprised. And I don't know if the grading scale, how it works. I don't really understand it. It also hurts my heart to even say that they have to be graded. It's a whole thing. But they said that we had 5 really highly graded quality embryos. So that gave us some hope. He said, there's no reason after looking at you that you shouldn't be able to carry. I did all the supplements, all the acupuncture. I stopped working out hard and did like my bar classes again. And I ate salmon and kale and avocados every single day and went to acupuncture twice a week and did every single thing that I knew what to do or was recommended to do. Did the transfer on St. Patrick's Day and got a positive test and was like, wow, okay.
You're like, over the hump. That was the problem. We needed a new set of embryos.
Exactly. On cloud 9. And then I went in and I remember I gave the nurse my arm and I was like, test my blood, but I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant, told like the entire office I'm pregnant. And they called that day and they're like, okay, you are pregnant. Take a breath. But
that hated but, right?
And I was like, no. You have no idea what my last few years have been like. I just need you to stop right there. And they're like, okay, but your numbers are low. They're like, but it doesn't, the second test is what's going to tell us. If it goes up by 50%, we're still going to be good. Go for the second test. It went up just a little bit. So they're like, okay, well, it still went up a little bit. You have to go for a third test. Went for a third test. It went up a little bit more. Okay, well, it's a bigger jump than the last time. So I need you to go for a fourth test. Go to the fourth test. My numbers like skyrocketed.
So you're like, oh, slow start, but we're good.
Right. Because after the third one, they're like, this is mostly an ectopic pregnancy. So then I'm Googling, like, what the hell is an ectopic? Like, what's happening now? And then 48 hours later, that's what they said. They're like, it could have been delayed implantation. We're not sure. You have to go get tested again. Okay. All right. So 48 hours later, numbers come back. They've like more than doubled. So now I'm like, whoa, this is it. Like, okay. So then they said, well, because of how weird your start was, you need to go for an ultrasound. So I was right at a little over 6 weeks. Go to the ultrasound. And they're like, okay, unfortunately, your sac is measuring more like 5.5 weeks, like a week behind. We don't see anything. If it was delayed implantation, couldn't make sense. Come back next week. So now at this point,
you're like, no, I've been here before, right?
I'm like, I just somebody give me an answer. I mean, when you think about it, it's now April of 2021, and it's just been one thing after another since, October of 2018, since that first miscarriage. And I'm like, okay. So we go back for the second ultrasound, and they're kind of, she's doing the ultrasound, and she's kind of makes this face like, huh, what? She goes, there's 2 sacs. Like, well, what do you mean there's 2 sacs? They put one embryo in. What do you mean? She's like, well, the sac from last week grew bigger. We can see, they didn't call it a heartbeat. They called it a flutter.
Mm-hmm. Like a little flicker, but they couldn't measure it.
They're like, we see a flicker in one. And they're like, and now this second sac has appeared, and it's taking shape the correct way. I guess you probably know a lot more about what the sac starts dividing and looking like. So I'm like, excuse me, are you telling me like these could be identical twins? And they're like, well, you put one in there and there's 2 now. So you have to come back next week.
So then you're really hopeful.
Oh, I am like planning the nursery, picking out matching names and outfits, like you name it. Literally, like, just, oh my gosh, like so excited. Can't believe it. And so, and by the way, this whole time I am like nauseous, my boobs hurt. So I'm like, this is it. And I'm getting more sick as the days go. And I'm like, yes, this is it. So we go back for our third ultrasound, and they do the ultrasound, and they're like, we're sorry, there's nothing in either of them.
Falling off a cliff right there, right?
I was like, I need you to check again. I need you to keep checking. And they're like, I'm sorry. I was like, well, are you sure? Like, can I come back next week? And they're like, well, at this point, you're 9.5 weeks and your sacs are measuring like 5 and 6 weeks. So there's nothing there. So I was like, okay. All right. How does that happen? And talk to the doctor, and they're like, you did everything right. The embryo was, just they pick the best looking one, right? That's what they said. They pick the one that looks the best. You don't know how they do that, but so I'm like, okay, if I'm on paper, everything's great. On paper, our embryo's great. I've done everything known to man outside of the medical realm. Like, sleep and de-stress and eat. What else is there? What else is there? And then they told me like, okay, have you been spotting or bleeding at all? I was like, not at all. So like, okay, well, you'll come off your meds and probably within like 2 weeks or so, you'll start to miscarry. Of course, that didn't happen. So I was like, what's happening? Like, well, essentially, you're still growing 2 empty sacs. So they said, they give you the 2 options of they give you medicine or you can have a DNC, which is just also in itself. I'm like, at that point, I'm like, just please tell me what I'm supposed to do.
I don't want either of these options. I want to be pregnant, but just what is going to help the most, right?
That's what I said. I was like, can I just do nothing? They're like, well, yes, but no. So you have to do something. And so, yeah, I shared on Instagram a few weeks ago, I had a DNC the Friday before Mother's Day and spent my Mother's Day on the couch, still like essentially bleeding, and it was horrific. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, Samantha, you've been through so much. And, from one, just as another woman, I'm just saying, I love you. I'm so proud that you're so brave in sharing your story. I had 3 miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy before I had my kids. And it was well before the days of the internet. And it was very isolating experiences. I think it still is, even if you have people who are supporting you. And it is an extreme time of self-blame and self-doubt. Like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? Was it this that I did? Was it that? Should I have done this thing differently? And I think that your eloquence and grace when talking about this really hard time, because it feels like it's been one different thing after another. I hope at the current moment you're taking, some time for healing, but I always think some of the most important things come out of these WTF, like what the fuck appointments with your doctor and saying, hey, and I tell my patients this all the time. Sometimes we don't know exactly what's going on, but we need a plan to do something different so that we can start process of elimination, thinking through, well, what could it be? What are we going to test? Or how are we going to change things? Or what are we going to do? And it's really, really hard to hear. And I say it probably every day. We're only as good as we are. We do not have 100% success rates. Live birth rates per genetically normal embryo transfer, national average is usually between 60 to 70%, and so that means that a lot of people have negative cycles or miscarriages along the way. And sometimes you just roll the coin, the bad side, multiple times. And the greatest odds is that if we keep going, we'll eventually get to the right one. But it is so hard. And I struggle with it too as a doctor, sitting on the other side of saying, how are we going to get there? What do we have to change? What are we missing? What can we add to this? What does this one person need? Because it's so hard emotionally on both ends of it. But I'm, always been so impressed by you by sharing your story, especially when it's not been easy. And it's one of those things where I'm sure at some moments I don't know, have you had moments where you didn't want to share? I know you've gathered a lot of support from the community, but I think it's one thing to say, let's film our IVF journey and show people what it's like. Like that sounds kind of warm and fuzzy. And it's another thing to say, let's show all these negatives and the DNC and the miscarriage and the loss and the heartbreak. Those are really hard things to share. Has that been hard on you?
Yeah. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. I always want to share with people because I know that there's probably so many other women around the world or the country that are sitting there facing the exact same thing. And it's nice to be able to connect with those people and know like, okay, this is hard or this is scary or this is nerve-wracking, but somebody else can go through it with me. I even say there was another girl, and she won't care, her name's Jenna, and another infertility site was like, hey, shout out to these, girls in our community going for their transfer today. And so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I don't mean to sound like weird, but I was just wondering, like, can we like DM each other throughout this like few day wait and, just kind of,
Be support. Yeah.
yeah. She's like, are you cramping? I'm like, I'm cramping a little. My boobs hurt. Do your boobs hurt? Like, what's happening with you? And so, because you have your friends and you have your family, but somebody who literally transferred on the same day, and her and I had not ever spoken to each other before. And it's just, that's what this community is. And so sometimes it is hard. After we found out that it really was a miscarriage and what was going to happen, we didn't give an update for a while. And a lot of people understood and were supportive of it. And then some people were like, well, how dare you not update us after this point? And I'm like,
stop.
I just need a moment to breathe, I just need a minute. And I will say though, I started reaching out to people on Instagram DMs from the community. I popped onto an app and was like, hey guys, like, do I take the pills? Do I do a DNC? What do I do? And kind of did it in the background instead of more at the foreground that time. Cause I didn't want people to be like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I know, like, I appreciate that. It's just,
but I want some more advice. I want help. Right.
Yeah. And so those women were just so instrumental in being like, this is what happened for me. And, and that's what I love about this community. Nobody's like, hey, do this. This is the best way. They're always like, this is what I did. And this was the good of it. And this was the ugly of it. So, that's ultimately, I chose to go down the route of having a DNC, and it was fine. You're medicated through it all. And it's just sad. And now my hormones hate me. People are like, how are you? I'm like, a disaster, because I feel like like a teenager again.
Yeah. It's so hard. And all you want really is to get back to normal, or to be able to get to that next step, to that next stage of treatment or testing or whatever you're choosing to do. And you're stuck in the in-between after the miscarriage, waiting to kind of feel normal again. It's really it's like insult to injury on top of the miscarriage, I think.
It really is. That's one topic that I really want to start talking about more, is because I thought in my head, I was going to have a DNC and I was going to be sad, but it was going to be like my last miscarriage where I was more grieving. So when I had my first miscarriage, it took a little bit, but I didn't feel like this. Like, my hair wasn't falling out. I've got weird rashes on me. Like, I'm just a disaster right now. And I can't get back to normal. And it's like so hard because you're so sad. You just lost a pregnancy. And in my head, I'm like, did I lose a pregnancy? Did I lose 2 pregnancies? Like, what do I call that? It just confuses me. And then it's like, okay, when do you start to feel like yourself again? Are you ever going to feel like yourself again? Like, at least after the first miscarriage, I felt like myself. I was just really sad. This time, it's like I turn around, I brush my hair, and the floor is covered in hair and things like that. And you're like, when does it stop? When does it just get better?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part.
And the further along you are, the longer it takes. And I think, that's part of it. Your body was making pregnancy hormone for a while and gearing up and getting ready because it didn't necessarily know what was going on. And it's so hard. And it's lonely, and it's just kind of leaves this void in you, especially when you ride the hope roller coaster. I know this, and I know my patients have said this before. Oh, I would have rather that test be negative than go through that whole process, right? Just kind of the up and down, planning the nursery. Oh, and especially to have it split into twins. You're thinking matching cribs, and what do you like? You're living it. You're thinking this is the reward for struggling through all this infertility, right? Now I'm going to get 2 babies and we'll close the chapter and go and be happy. And then to have that dream die is just, it leaves a big hole in your heart, in addition to all the physical scars. What are you doing kind of at the current moment to try to take care of yourself? Or what advice do you have for people who are going through this? Or do you not know because you're just still in the midst of it?
A little bit of both. I like to, when people ask or they're like, hey, I'm going through this too. First of all, Instagram is a highlight reel of your best self.
Yes.
And that's what I always tell people. I'm going to post a picture where I have my shit all together and my hair is curled and everything, and I had done a recipe and that was planned for my feed. And that's not exactly how you feel, right? And I always tell people, like, you cannot look at social media because people are like, oh, you seem to have it all together. I'm like, I do not have it together at all. I am sad. I'm hurting. I'm bleeding. My hair is falling out. Like, I am a disaster, but I try not to, sometimes I want to talk about that. And sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to feel all that right now. And that's okay. Like, I tell people, because obviously you went to therapy after the miscarriage and you're supposed to work through those emotions. And right now I'm like, nope, I am just not really wanting to face all of it right now. Like, it happened and it hurts and I hurt, but I don't know. It's just this really weird place. Like, the first time I had a miscarriage, I just wanted to talk about it and cope with it and grieve and like memorialize it and just do all the things and try to feel better. And this time it's just like a wall has gone up. And I'm like,
No.
I can't feel right now because I don't want to feel that right now because it hurts so much.
I mean, I think one thing you're saying that I think is really important too for people to hear and to know is that boundaries are really good for you at all different times. But even when it's social media, that's your space that you've created, and we are lucky to be let into your life. And you have no obligation to share everything. And I'm sure you get negative trolley comments at times about you shouldn't do this, or if you'd only done this, or I can't believe you're sharing this. And everybody wants to have an opinion on the matter, which is just ridiculous. And, setting boundaries, sometimes saying, I don't want to deal with that, or I don't have the emotional reserve for that right now. That's okay too.
Yeah, I tell people that a lot, that boundaries. I worked with a lot of therapists when I was writing my book and just trying to figure out how to give a little bit of concise advice. And I was like, okay, I would like to go to other women in the community and professionals and hear what they have to say, along with what I did. Like, I'm a big journaler. I love journaling because I just get it all out,
Yeah.
and it just all comes out. And so that's a big piece of advice. But when I worked with the therapist, they were like, you have to set boundaries for yourself, for your marriage, for your friends, for everything. And that's been really helpful because, the first time I had a miscarriage, I wanted to sometimes sit with my friends and talk about it. And this time I was like, do you want to talk? I'm like, absolutely not. I do not want to talk right now. I'm not there. I just, sometimes when I go through like a podcast and explain everything that we've been through, it's kind of like a holy shit.
Yeah.
It's a
It's
lot.
hard. It's a lot. And, I think one of the reasons why, well, there's so many reasons why the infertility community loves you, but also you've been through so many different things that resonates with so many different people on a personal level, not just, oh, here's Samantha being honest and open, which is admirable on its own, but you're living through the different layers of PCOS, male factor, IVF, failed transfers, surrogacy, miscarriage, recurrent pregnancy loss. I mean, even just listing it out, that's a ton to see somebody coming in. If I saw your chart coming my way, the first thing I'd say is, my goodness, you've been through so much. And I do think that sometimes reliving that's really tough, but I'm glad you're doing it for everybody here because I think the take home message is one, you're not alone, right? To anybody who's going through this.
Completely.
And we've talked about the fertility community a few times, but if you are new and you haven't found it yet, on all different social sites, Instagram's a huge one. There are people who have come together who are in the midst of or who have gone through infertility and are really a huge sense of support, providing knowledge and resources and just community that can be really, really valuable. So if somebody's struggling or at the beginning of this journey and feeling like, you did back at 25 or 26, all my friends are getting pregnant. We've been trying. Why is it not happening? You're not alone in that. There are a ton of us in this community who have been there and who've gone through it. And I think the other thing is that there's really a lot of power in your story for advocating for yourself. And, a few times you mentioned along the way about, saying, you're type A, or you want that appointment, you want to get the information, you want to move forward with the aggressive treatment, getting opinions at a new clinic. I tell people all the time, you're not married to one clinic or one doctor or your OBGYN. You can go to a fertility clinic at any time you want. You can, if you're not having success. And there's times I have patients and I say, you should go get another opinion, because you need more eyes on this. You need to see, maybe there's something I'm not thinking about. Maybe you'll come back and say, they had the exact same plan as you, and now I feel more confident in it.
Right.
It doesn't mean that something's wrong, but we're all trained a little different. We all do things a little bit differently. We all have different ideas. And I think as long as you're going somewhere where they're staying on top of the evidence and the research and they're explaining to you, but advocating for yourself is good and really needed in the current fertility world for most people.
It's so true. I had a lot of people. So our Bundle of Joy Fund is connected to the Reach Clinic here in Charlotte. They are like family. I've worked with them now for so many years with our fund. And it is hard when I was like, hey, I love you guys, but I'm going to go to a different clinic and I'm going to go talk to different doctors. And they were like, completely. We want that for you. Like, I think I've had a lot of women say, well, I'm scared. I don't want them to get upset. They're not going to be upset with you for getting a second or third or even fourth opinion. And to your point, sometimes the patients come back and they're like, okay, it's exactly the same, and then sometimes, like for me, it wasn't that there was, that everybody was saying something different. I just in my head was like, okay, I'm going to try a new clinic because
a new lab, a new environment.
I'm going to try it all. And that way, if it doesn't work, then at least, one day, regardless of where our journey or our chapter or whatever ends, I could say, okay, I did what I could. And then another topic that I know we could talk all day is, and speaking of social media, is people are like, I want to talk about secondary infertility because that is such a beast in and of itself. And it's so hurtful when people are like, why aren't you just happy with your son?
Just grateful for the one you have.
Yeah.
Why
aren't you just grateful? And I said, I am so grateful for him. And half the reason I fight so hard for a sibling is for him. And it's so easy for people on the outside to just be like, well, you have him and he's great. I'm like, you don't see when he cries when we go to things because he's the only one without a sibling. Yeah. You don't see when he prays at night to have a sibling because he feels left out. And sure, he might be an only child and we work through his emotions with him. We've always been, and this was another thing with getting to read books and talk with therapists, we're always create a safe space for him to tell us his real emotions, Yeah. So when he's sad or when he's happy, and that's the thing. And it's just so hard. And I've met so many women now that are like, I love my child that I have. And if that's what it ends up being, that I have one child, then that's what it ends up being. But I don't think it makes me a bad mother for wanting a second child.
No. And I've had so many people with secondary infertility say the same thing. They feel like they don't fit with a lot of people who have infertility because they feel judged for wanting more or being selfish or greedy or whatever that kind of idea is that people are telling them they're not grateful. And just like I tell every person, you're allowed to want the family you want to have, right? That's your desire. And it does not mean you're not grateful for your child already. It means you think that there's a missing person in your family that you're trying to bring in, right? And I think that that's still extremely valid, and it doesn't hurt less because you already have a child. In a lot of ways, it hurts more because you probably resonate with this. Here you are, Mother's Day, like sad and on the couch when, you'd love to be spending it doing other things or spending time with your child, but you're doing this, right? It's a tough place to be.
It's really hard. And that's the thing about infertility. And I love that so many people are speaking up about it because even this many years into it, you find somehow it always creates a new feeling, a new problem, a new issue. And the greatest part of this community is I know I could go on my phone, and whether it's an app or an Instagram or a support group, and say, okay, what did you do during this? How did you feel? Is there anything that helped? And that's that's so helpful. And, like I put the post out because people are like, well, what are you guys going to do? And I had told them about the DNC and the miscarriage and the Mother's Day. And this lady reached out to me and she was like, I was bleeding on Mother's Day too. I was recovering from the DNC at the same time, like across the country. And I was like, it was just, it's not nice because you don't want anybody else to have to go through that. Like her and I got to chat and like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Do you want to talk about it? And there isn't, it's so weird because people are like, how can you talk to strangers like that? I'm like, it's easier because there's
that's a safe place.
Yes. And there's no judgment and you don't have to worry about what you say or how you're feeling because these people feel like the exact same things because you're going through it together.
Yeah, it's not really a stranger. It's more like a peer who's experiencing the exact same thing. You're just now being connected. And it's really more, helpful probably than talking to people who love you and care about you in your real life, but who've never been through it and have no idea.
It is. Some of my friends, they're like, well, why don't you talk to me about this? And I'm like, it's not because I don't love you or I don't want to talk to you about it, but I find the support that I need, like you said, from other people in the community because, my best friend, I love her to death. She has 3 kids. It's the walking joke that her and her husband pass in the hallway and they get pregnant. And I love her to pieces. And she's always so self-conscious about what she says because she's like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I was like, you will not offend me. Like we're basically family. I was like, but I know that you've never been through this, so I can go on social and talk to somebody who's living it almost in real time like I am. And it really helps with the healing. I'm not going to sit here and say to you like, oh yeah, I've been through all that and I feel great. But I can honestly say is from the miscarriage in 2018 to this miscarriage, I've had so many extra tools and resources and connections to be able to cope with it and to be able to handle it better and understand it better than I did. And, I don't think that you ever get over it, quote unquote.
No, you don't.
But the first time I went through it, I just spent days crying and it just felt like I was never going to get out of this hole. And this time there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of sad days, but I felt like, okay, let's get the pieces, let's get your shit together. We're going to keep moving forward. Like you got to be strong and you learn things and you, I don't want to say feel better quicker because that's not right, but you talk to other women, you get their support. They empower you. I think that's the word I'm looking for. They empower you to get through the hardest of struggles and to keep moving forward.
I think that's so true. You can gain so much support and feel inspired and empowered from just knowing that these other people have your back and they've been through it or seeing people on the other side or in the midst of it. And one thing you said was about like your fertility doctor. You've heard people say that they would be upset if they switched clinics or, and I've heard people say that too. And I just want to say as on my side of it, I just got a baby announcement in the mail from one of my patients who left and went to another clinic. I had her for part of the journey. We made embryos and then we weren't having success with transfer and she ended up going somewhere else. And she has a baby and I'm thrilled for her, right? That's the point. It's not bitter that, oh, she left and I'm resentful. I'm thrilled that she's on that other side of the journey. And it takes a team. You have to find your team. You have to find what works for you. And sometimes you just need a new environment. And that's literally what she said. I've had too much loss here and I love you, but I'm going to go somewhere else. And I said, I think that's perfectly appropriate, go and keep me updated. So we all are rooting for our patients. And I think that what you're doing is giving people, a list of things to talk to their doctor about, feeling like they can talk to their team, ask appropriate questions. And those things are so important. I want to jump to ask you about the book. So did you always want to write a book? Like, how did this come about?
Well, I'm a journaler. That's my form of my therapy. And
Same.
So it really started a while ago, before we even went through IVF, just those feelings of what's wrong with me? Why God? Why me? What's happening? And I just started writing everything down. And then, as we kept going through our journey, I was like, man, the biggest thing I hear from people is, thanks for talking about this. I don't feel either alone, crazy, like I'm the only person facing this, And so I thought, I want to write our whole story, because people know our story from this segment or this segment, but I want to write it through and through so that people can A, not feel alone, but B, see what we got wrong or see what we got right and take that and be able to say, like, for example, when I found out I had PCOS and I went on Clomid, but we didn't know to ask for a semen analysis. Well, my hope is by putting it in the book, other people
will know.
aren't going to spend, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 cycles because it's been so many years, but aren't going to spend that time just being like, oh, okay, well, this is what I was told to do, so I'm going to do it. They're going to be, oh, I remember in this book that we should get him tested too, or, different things in our marriage. That's a big chapter that I talk about, because everybody, thinks, sometimes you see people on social and, they've got their husband by them. And even though they're dealing with this hard stuff, the husband's giving them the shots and you're like, what the hell? Like
that's not how it really is.
We're just fighting all the time. And so I wanted to write about it in the book, because it doesn't just take a toll on you personally. It takes a toll on your entire marriage. It takes a toll on your friendships. It takes a toll on everything. And I wanted to be very open about that, and to be open that sometimes you're not going to be able to get it right by yourself. You're going to need to go to a therapist. And there's no shame in that. I think a lot of people are still like, wait, you have to go to a marriage counselor? You don't go to, like, yes, we went because we were having problems, but marriage is work, and going to a counselor shows that you're putting in that work.
Yes.
Like, you're trying to make it better. So it shouldn't be this like shameful thing. So yeah, there's just a ton of reasons why I wanted to write the book, and it's not funny, but since the book ended to where we are now, I'm like, geez, oh, criminy, I could have written a whole nother book from.
Yeah, you're like, I need book 2.
Yeah, from trying to find a surrogate during COVID, which is finding a surrogate is like essentially finding a husband almost, because
harder, maybe there's less of them.
Well, there's a lot less of them. And I always try to explain it to this, like, when you find a babysitter for your first child for the first time, and there was that commercial, I don't remember that commercial, but remember she was like interviewing, and the lady had like a PhD in child psychology. And she was like, yeah, I don't think you're good enough. Do you remember that commercial? Yeah. It's like the person who's going to literally have your child before you meet your child. It's so stressful. Like, I would love to just talk about all of that one day, because there's so much stress. Now, the surrogate that we used, we're like friends. We're so close. Like, she's amazing. But that's a topic in and of itself that I could go on about for hours. I'll just say this little funny piece. I remember being in Target the day before the transfer. And I'm in Target and I'm just standing there crying. And I call my husband from the middle of Target, like sobbing. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know what you're supposed to buy somebody who's going to carry your child. There's no Hallmark card for this. I don't know what's appropriate. And I just stood there and people were just walking by. And I'm like, I will never forget. I'm standing in the bathrobe section in pajamas, just bawling. Like, what do you get somebody that's going to carry your baby? That's a big thing. From that to this last transfer to finding a new clinic, I'm like, okay, book 2 one day, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be like a how-to guide, like how to survive all these different things. I think, Samantha, we could talk all day, and I've loved having you here. We talked before this started about maybe taking this onto Instagram and do some Instagram lives. And I'd love to do them about, PCOS, about finding a surrogate, all these different things that we've been talking about. I would love to maybe do a little series and divide them up and us kind of go through some of these ins and outs of both of those, if you are willing. But just tell everybody where to find you and where all your stuff is and all the things that you have your hands in.
Yes. Well, first, I want to say thank you because I feel like I learned so much from you. And you being a medical professional and having such a big voice in the community, because there is a lot of information out there, and some of it's great, and some of it's like, is that true? Should I try that? So I just love that, I know that I could go and see what you're saying and be like, oh, okay. Like this is factual. Like, has a medical scientific reason behind it. And it's so helpful to know that. So anyways, thank you for always taking your time out of, I'm sure, your very busy schedule to essentially give, free advice or thoughts or different things to people like me who are like, wait, what are we supposed to do at this point? So thank you. But yeah, I can be found at Samantha Busch, BUSCH everywhere. And I try to, talk about infertility, share recipes, show Brexton, my little son who's racing now like his daddy. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed having Samantha on and hearing her story as much as I enjoyed talking to her. As always, you can follow along on Instagram at nataliecrawfordmd or go and check out the YouTube channel. Thanks, friends.
My name is Len Webb.
And I'm Vincent Williams.
We'd like to welcome you to our documentary podcast, The Class of 1989. Over the course of 6 episodes, Vincent and I will examine the importance of 6 Black films that came out in '89 and how they shaped and influenced popular culture, filmmaking, and society in general.
Come on, sucker. Let's get it on.
New episodes will begin running weekly on March 6th.